inaugural sharing circle. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our first inaugural sharing circle. Today, I'm joined by Kessia Correa and Stephanie Ross, our comms folks. Steph is out of BC and Kessia is in Ontario. We'll do some more introductions as we go along. But first, I wanted to kick off sharing circle. And the information that I'm going to be providing is from passthefeather.ca website. And it really helped us understand the importance of a sharing circle with our Indigenous Engagement and Communications program at BGIS. So I'll read out what the importance of a sharing circle. The circle influences how Indigenous people view the world. That is how all things are connected. Balance relies on this connection, and without balance, health is compromised. Everything encircles cycles. The sun, the moon, the seasons, the journey of our lives from birth to death. Circles are a natural way to walk your path and conduct your life and align with fundamentals of the natural world. Indigenous ways of knowing use and interpret the circle in many different ways, but with the same good intentions. The medicine circle or medicine wheel is used as a diagram for everything from the 4 directions, a path to health and wellness, the connection between the human races of Mother Earth, as well as the cycles of life, seasons, and medicines. The circle is whole and doesn't end. The circle can be unbalanced depending on what is in it or not in it. But in general, a circle is impartial, fair, and representative of interconnectivity and equity. The sharing circles for BGIS was very important about stories of our internal team members, our vendors, from an Indigenous perspective. In a circle, we are all equal. No one in front of you, no one behind you, no one above you, and no one below you. Sharing circles promote equality, trust, respect, honesty, dialogue, decision-making, sense of community. So we would like to launch our sharing circle really around sharing of stories. This can be stories from different people, from different walks of life, but really taking that Indigenous perspective on. Sharing or talking circles provide an opportunity for each and every person to be heard, whether they choose to speak or not. And sometimes not speaking speaks volumes. So that's a little bit about sharing circles and what it means to me. As a director of tenant communications at BGIS, we're constantly trying to promote storytelling. And then from an Indigenous perspective, they have a long history of storytelling. And this really helps us engage with different stakeholders. So I look forward to the opportunity of doing many different types of sharing circles. So at this point, I'm going to hand it over to Stephanie, who's going to talk a little bit about yourself and the importance of sharing circle to you. Over to you, Steph.
Okay, hi, I'm Stephanie Ross. I've been with BGIS as a communication specialist for just about 3 years now. And I think that sharing circle is going to be really useful in my role, just so we can discuss sort of all the good things that are happening within BGIS. There's lots of projects that's going to be coming up through the pipeline that are going to be more Indigenous focused, where we can be using this practice to not only discuss the projects, but to really understand sort of what are the good things that are coming out of those projects for the community.
Thank you very much, Steph. I look forward to working with you on many different sharing circles and helping amplify the stories of projects. And just to expand on what Stephanie just said, projects are a great opportunity for us to reflect our Canadian culture, our Canadian Indigenous culture as well, because as we integrate those into buildings, you know, Indigenous architecture is long-standing. It's going to be there for years to come. So we have a huge opportunity, like Steph said, in projects to have those different perspectives be heard, escalated, and incorporated into different project development. So I look forward to that, Steph. Now over to Kessia. And Cassie, if you can introduce yourself and talk a little bit about what sharing circles mean to you.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me here. My name is Cassia Correa, and I'm the communications lead for the Ontario region. I spoke about this at our National Indigenous Peoples Day, or the event that we had in June, but diversity and inclusion overall has always been something that's been a passion of mine. And the work that we've done at BGIS and that we continue to do is just so important. The connection between Indigenous engagement and the sharing circles really segues nicely into our overall company culture, and it allows us to have meaningful work.
So Cassie, I know you've been extremely involved in building our Indigenous communications program. You've been involved with developing the 2 paths. So in the essence of, in your heart of hearts, what difference do you want to make? Like, what's your personal experience? And I'll get Steph to answer that as well. What difference do you want to make, Kessia, to the work we do and our ability to make a difference in the community?
Myself personally, it's about amplifying voices that haven't been amplified. And because of my own personal background and coming from being a biracial woman in Canada too, I've really had to find my voice in a unique way, and I've done so more so recently in the past few years. I've never really made that connection as to why diversity and inclusion is so important to me. But I think with the Indigenous engagement, I've said this many times before, but it really shocked me how little I knew about Indigenous Canada and Indigenous culture. And it really is so rich and so meaningful, just the teachings and the learnings that they are able to share through storytelling and just through having these conversations. So really getting their stories heard and working together to make Canada better overall has been so meaningful and impactful. So that's definitely why it's important to me.
Well, it's interesting that you talked about amplification of voices, because I feel many of our voices, whether it be Indigenous, those of, of different backgrounds, are not heard. Those of, those people who are just a little different from the regular old, folks, and we need to amplify those differences and accept those differences. And through the amplification of these stories, I think will help everyone be more accepting of those differences, have a culture of acceptance and openness. And I think that's what I'm hoping to achieve long term here as we start to tell these different stories. Okay, over to you, Steph. Well, we talked about personal feelings and thoughts. What do you hope to achieve personally out of these sharing circles?
Yeah, great question, Julie. I think from the sharing circle in particular, I think similar to what Kes just said is just really creating understanding within our group, but definitely within BGIS. And then that way we can adopt some of those practices, such as the sharing circle, that is so useful. And I think also too, just creating opportunity for Indigenous folks within our organization, as vendors, contractors. I think that's really important, and it's really important so we can create that diversity and that inclusion. But I think it all does really start with understanding.
Yes, and I know we've talked a little bit as a team, and not the whole team could be here today, unfortunately. But we figured we would just get started and launch just an intro into Sharing Circle and what we hope to achieve with it. And hopefully through the next year or so that we start to post a lot of these stories and the amplification of those voices. So, Steph, I know I hate to put you on the spot, but what would be some of the top things that you would like to see on that Sharing Circle?
In terms of discussion topics, or?
Yeah, in terms of discussion topics.
I think we really need to be telling the good news stories that we're having. BGIS is spread across the country, so we're a bit siloed in that aspect. And I think we can definitely use this to talk about, what kind of sustainable projects are we doing? What Indigenous vendors are we working with? What Indigenous artwork do we have in certain buildings? And just sharing sort of across the country, sort of what we're doing in each region.
Thanks. And Cassie, what about you? What kind of topics would you like to see?
For myself personally, especially because the sharing circles, how it originates with Indigenous culture, I really love when we're able to link the sharing circles to the direct work that we're doing. So kind of similar to what Steph mentioned, whether that's through highlighting our Indigenous vendors, and through highlighting the Indigenous practices and the sustainability practices that we're doing at our building, but creating that link and showing how it's all connected, and how, just because we're meeting and discussing diversity and inclusion in our Indigenous Communications Committee, like how is that relevant to the actual work that we're doing within BGIS? Because I don't think everybody knows that and knows or is able to see that link. But I think just sharing those stories and getting that started is a really great point. Another aspect too, we've been meeting with a lot of Indigenous vendors ourselves. And when you speak with them, they're able to share so many different stories themselves that are so worth sharing to everybody. And that's just another way to amplify those voices and having them be heard, not only by the people that are working closely with them, but everyone across BGIS, and getting their names out there. I think that's something that I've really found fascinating and incredible, and I've loved that part of this journey. So I am excited to continue doing that.
Yeah, it's amazing because when you tie it based to the work that we're doing, we have an opportunity to make a difference based on our day-to-day work. So how can we incorporate that into our day-to-day work, and tell those stories? I just this week we met with eSupply, and he talked about his Indigenous journey, and they're a great Indigenous company. And do you know their name has come up in 3 additional meetings I had today, like over this week, around what a great vendor they are. And and by those discussions, we say, oh yeah, that's a great idea. We should use them for this. We should use them for that. And while still following open, fair procurement practices, which is a great point, right? So, I look forward to those storytelling. I look forward to, our Indigenous marketplace that we'll be launching in January. We have Black History Month coming up in February, and we look forward to sharing all of those different stories. So it builds on Indigenous culture, but we will be sharing different stories and different aspects of life, whether that be Indigenous, non-Indigenous, because it is about taking that cultural element and, using that sharing circle mechanism to tell stories for all of us to be heard. So at this point, we can close off. Anything else to add, Cassia?
Yeah, I wanted to add to that as well, just because I think another thing that I love hearing is just everyone else's stories within BGIS, following everyone's journeys, how they started and how they got to where they are now. And I feel like, having every voice heard is really the goal of the sharing circles, and making sure that everyone is on this equal playing field. I really like the analogy to the circle that you used. But I think that's so important, in having everyone at all levels being able to share their own unique stories, because it helps us better understand one another, but also helps us work more effectively and collaborate with each other that much better as well.
Steph, any closing comments?
Just if there's a way that we can have folks submit topics for discussion, and sort of, building on that collaborative spirit. I want to know what people want to talk about.
That is a great point, Steph. So you can reach out to either Stephanie Ross, Cassia Correa, Julie Matthews. We're all on LinkedIn. We're all in the email. If you're a BGIS team member, you know who we are. You can just email us. Let us know what you think. What topic would you like to hear about? And we'll work with you to raise your voice. and expand on that. That's a great point, Steph. So reach out. Don't hesitate to reach out and let us know what you think. If you're a potential BGIS vendor or a vendor, again, reach out. We're all on LinkedIn. You can find us. If not, this posting will be through LinkedIn. So reach out. Again, let your voice be heard and connect with us. At this point, we'll wrap up. Thank you very much, Stephanie and Kessia. Really appreciate the time for today and helping us launch our sharing circle. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.